Assalamualaikum and hello to everyone. We are from Group 36, which consists 5 members. The first member is me, Nur Atika. The second member is Nur Atira binti Jumat, Nur Arisha binti Zulgafri, and Nur Asnida binti Otoara. We are going to talk about the Keynesian school. So, what will we discuss in these slides? In these slides, we're gonna present about the introduction of the Keynesian school, the objectives, the 5 major questions of the Keynesian school, the major figure, and conclusion. The introduction. The term Keynesian economics is used to describe economic theories that have evolved from the principles presented in Keynes' general theory of 1936. As the first findings were improved and accepted, Keynesian economics became the dominant school of microeconomics in the 1950s, 1960s, and early 1970s. The Keynesian school emerged from the neoclassical school, with Keynes himself being Marshallian. Despite his harsh criticism of many parts of neoclassical economics, which he grouped with Ricardian ideas under the heading of classical economics, Keynes adopted many of its postulates and methodologies. His system was founded on a subjective psychology approach and was infused with marginalist ideas such as static equilibrium economics.
Assalamualaikum and greetings to Madam Dayang. My name is Nur Asnida, so I'm going to continue this presentation. Starting from the objective. The primary goal of this assignment is to research the following. Number 1 is summarize the Keynesian school's 5 major questions. Number 2, describe in detail one major figure from the school, highlighting their intriguing history and theories.
Next is historical background. The discoveries of John Maynard Keynes are the foundation of the Keynesian school of thought. In his 1936 book, The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, Keynes discussed the depression and its effects as well as its treatment. Aggregate demand does not have to equal the economy's productive capacity in the short run, according to Keynes. According to Keynes, insufficient total demand might lead to prolonged periods of high employment. He developed a theory that would explain the reasons of saving, output, investment, and consumption. In cumulative demand and aggregate supply determines the overall economy's level of output and employment. Many other authors were influenced by Keynes' different conceptions, such as government deficit spending during periods of low private investment or consumption.
There are 5 major tenets in the Keynesian school. The first one is macroeconomic emphasis. The drivers of total or aggregate amounts of consumption, saving, income and output, and employment were of interest to Keynes and his supporters. As a factor consumption, Keynes emphasized the absolute size of current income. According to Keynes, current period consumer expenditure is primarily determined by current period income. The higher one's income, the higher his consumer expenditure during that time. The second one is demand orientation. Keynesian economists emphasize the importance of effective demand, now known as aggregate expenditures, as the immediate determinant of national income, production, and employment. Consumption, investment, government, and net export spending are all included in aggregate expenditures according to this economics. The third one is instability in the economy. According to Keynesians, the economy is prone to recurring booms and busts because of the erratic quantity of expected investment spending. Adjustment in investment plans have a greater impact on national income and production than the initial investment changes. Changes in national income, not interest rates, are utilized to achieve equilibrium levels of investment and saving, which are the levels that exist after all adjustments have been made. The fourth one is wages and price rigidity. Wages are inflexible downward of institutional variables like as union contracts, minimum wages, and implicit contracts. According to Keynesians, understanding between employers and their workers that wages will not be cut during downturns judged to be temporary. Firms respond to decreasing sales by cutting output and firing or laying off people rather than insisting on salary reduction during periods of weak aggregate demand for products and services. The last one is active fiscal and monetary policies. Keynesians believe that the government should intervene actively to create full employment, price stability, and economic growth through proper fiscal and monetary policies. To counteract a recession or depression, the government should either raise expenditure or lower taxes, with the latter boosting private consumer spending.
Assalamualaikum and hi. So my name is Nur Alisha binti Zulkifli. Now I will explain a briefing about whom the school benefit or seek to benefit of Keynesian economics. The great success of Keynesian economy cannot be complete because it addressed the pressing problem of depression and severance of employment relationship that come into unemployment. Keynesian economists argue that the farming is stimulated when there is a healthy amount of business driven by an amount of profitable expenditure. Keynesians believe that the layoffs were due to the lack of spending in the economy, which lowered aggregate demand. The continued reduction in spending during the recession resulted in a further reduction in demand, which in turn triggered extended layoff rate, which result in lower spending as the number of unemployed increase. Moreover, Keynesian economics is offering commodities for almost everyone and take into account what was previously done as a necessity. Community income from full or fuller employment and individual or group who lose because of the direct of retrenchment compensation program can be smoothly ignored. While labor is sometimes exposed to certain Keynesian offering, it explicitly approve of Keynesian largest pretension. Increase aggregate demand made for tighter labor demand and allow union to negotiate better wages and working conditions with lower fear of dismissal. Moreover, farmers have long favored simple financial program with the lower interest rate. They also come to the big calculation on government spending program for agriculture. In fact, their spoken have put forward rationalization about the multiply long before it was incorporated into the Keynesian system in defending their income before government intervention in increasing global inflow. They claim that every dollar entered by farmer generates $7 increase in public incomes through the re-expenditure of increasing farmer bills. In the 1916 and 1917, consumers generally viewed tax cut positively and support politicians who propose a recommendation for them. Similar cut on levy and average reduction in government spending have been taken into account based on the Keynesian principle that it is necessary to stimulate demand and profitable growth. In the 1918, the explanation for tax cuts on supply side disclosure, but it was with Keynesian principle. Okay, that's all from me. Let's move to the next slide. Thank you.
So, how was the historical valid, useful, or correct in its time? The Great Depression, which is took place in 1830s, was causes involuntary employment problem. This is because the lack of demand can decrease the consumer spending. Then, when the demand is decreased, traders also start to reduce their production. Then, when they reduce their production, there is a low profit. Then, employer need to lay off their employees because employer were no longer able to pay wages. So due to this, low job opportunities in the labor market. Then this is because this is can cause social problem happen in their family, like violence, because there is no more money to buy their own thing. Then the second one is re-explanation of the function of the business cycle. In Keynes' thought, in Keynes' thought, No one's going to spend all their money to buy goods and services, especially in the Great Depression, because they need to increase their reserve. Yeah, they need to, because due to increase in reserve, the consumer spending also decrease because they're afraid to spend their money. Then this situation will worry all trader as no customer are buying their product. Uh, it 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 even more worse, become more worse. Uh, the the firm need to close because there's no more income. The problem that I just mentioned just now. So John Maynard was create two policy to solve this problem because economic classic cannot solve this problem. So what is fiscal policy? Fiscal policy is a financial stimulus that implemented by the national government. The second one is this policy work by increasing government spending such as the construction of hospital. Then fiscal policy can be implemented by the government by lowering income taxes on individual and businesses. Tech, tech, cat, Tech cut can add more financial capital to invest to bring the economy more further. The second one is monetary policy. What is monetary policy? This is policy that involves the central bank that control the loan interest rate. During an economic recession, Keynesians say that interest rate should be lowered to increase the amount of money supply in the economy. So, lower interest rate can encourage lending activities among individual or businesses. Indirectly, private business also help the government to increase production and help the country solve the problem of economic recession.
Next is the last major questions of Keynesian school. Which tenets of the school became a lasting contributions? Number one is consumption function. It shows the link between total consumptions and gross national income. The goal is to establish a mathematical link between disposable income and consumer purchasing, but only on a global scale. Number two is investment in government infrastructure. According to this hypothesis, spending increases aggregate output and creates greater money. This means that a consumer purchasing produces money for a company, which it spends on things like equipment, employee pay, energy, material acquired, service, taxes, and investment returns. The last one is a lower interest rate. The public's motivations to deposit money in banks is reduced when interest rates fall. Other financial industries, on the other hand, will see a rise in investment. These investments help to boost the economy recovery.
So now I will explain about argumentation of the economist John Maynard Keynes, one of the greatest economists of the 20th century, because this Keynesian most believe the aggregate demand was an important key in the macroeconomic issue, such as unemployment. Before Keynes, economists generally believed that an invisible hand of demand could direct authority to full possibility of the economy. Keynesian economists, on the other hand, believe that such a free demand of market cannot be completely changed because of certain characteristics similar to wages and inherent price. Therefore, it is necessary for the government to be a mediator in the free demand of market significantly by spending more money during the recession and lower rate the increased demand. Aggregate demand, AD, the basis on which most Keynesian economists made their view to believe in the aggregate demand was the sum dimension of all the final goods and services produced to make a measurement of the economic stability. That because it is exactly the same, because the use of the same equation of the increase and decrease to be done together. The Keynes equation for this term is AD same to the C plus I plus G plus X minus 2M. Then C means consumption, I is for the investment, and G for refer to the government spending, while X and M are export and import independently lah. As an example, to be clear, Keynesian economists dispute the nation held by some economists that lower rate wages can restore full employment as the labour demand curve slope increase like any other normal demand curve. Instead, he argued that the employer would not add employee to produce some goods that could not be sold because of the demand for their product will decrease. In addition, poor business condition makes company to reduce capital investment and dismiss some of the employee rather than take advantage of lower price to invest in a new plant and equipment. This will also have the effect of reduction of overall spending and employment, essentially saving unless a specific purpose such as retirement or education were also frowned upon by Keynesians. He believes it is harmful to the economy because the less money in circulation, the less money stimulate growth. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you. Move to the next slide.
Keynes argued that if aggregate demand in the economy fell, the resulting decrease in output and jobs would cause a drop in prices and wages. Lower inflation and wages would encourage business to invest in capital and hire more workers. According to Keynes, the intensity and duration of the Great Depression put this principle to the test. Firstly, Keynesian economics and the Great Depression. Keynesian economics is commonly referred to as depression economics because his general theory was developed during a period of deep depression. He argued that once an economic slump occurs, the fears and pessimism that it instills in firms and investors tends to become self-fulfilling, leading to a prolonged period of low economic activity and unemployment. In response, Keynes proposed for a counter-cyclical fiscal strategy in which the government engages in deficit spending to compensate for the drop in investment and raise consumer spending to stabilize aggregate demand. He argued that if the government increased welfare spending and hiked taxes, it would discourage people from spending their money. Instead, he suggested that the government spend more money and reduce taxes to reduce the budget deficit and boost consumer demand. This, in turn, would result in a boost in total economic activity and a decrease in unemployment. Next is Keynesian economics and fiscal policy. The Keynesian multiplier's magnitude is linked to the marginal propensity to consume. According to this theory, spending increases aggregate output and generates greater money. The money creation process that comes from a fractional reserve banking system is referred to as the money multiplier. Many economists prefer to use multiplier generated models despite the fact that fiscal stimulus is significantly less successful than the multiplier model predicts. Lastly, Keynesian economics and monetary policy. Keynesian economics emphasize demand-side responses to recessions and argues that active input is needed to promote short-term demand. Keynesian thinkers conflict with those who argue for limited government engagement in the economy because of their emphasis on direct government action. They claim that wages and employment are slower to adjust to market needs and require government intervention to keep on track. Monetarist economists strive to avoid the zero-bound problem by controlling the money supply and lowering interest rates. When cutting interest rates fails to produce results, Keynesian economists says that other techniques, especially fiscal policy, must be utilized. Other interventionist measures include direct labor supply control, adjusting tax rates, changing monetary policy, or restricting the supply of products and services until employment and demand are restored.
In conclusion, the Keynes theory created by John Maynard has helped break the deadlock in the economic problem occurred during 1830s. In this regard, All economies and their countries should make this figure as an example and use his theory in the economic development of the country. As the saying goes, the difficulty lies not so much in developing new ideas as in escaping from old one. Indirectly, private business also help the government to increase production and help the country solve the problem of economic recession. That's all. Thank you for your attention.
As you can see on the slide above, these are some of the reference sources that we use in making these assignments. That's all from our group members. Thank you so much.